The alarm hit before I even understood what had happened. 1 second I was checking a sensor line at the edge of Kael'thas Station, and the next second, something huge came out of the ash-colored bushes and grabbed my boot right off my foot. I did not even have time to react. It happened in a blink. The creature was the size of a truck, with 6 legs and skin like armor plating, and it looked at me for 1 long second before it turned and ran back into the wildland with my boot still in its mouth. I stood there on 1 bare foot, staring at the space where the animal had disappeared, and I thought, well, that is not how I wanted my afternoon to go. The station called this creature a ripper. I had heard the name before, mostly in warnings. Do not go near the ridge alone. Do not walk past the marked fence line without a partner. The ripper had killed before. Everyone on this station knew that. So when I limped back through the main gate with 1 boot missing, the first person I saw, a woman named Priya, who worked communications, dropped her tablet on the floor. I told her what happened. I said the animal took my boot and ran off. I asked if anyone had a spare pair I could borrow until the next supply drop. She looked at me, like I had just told her the sky had turned green. Within 10 minutes, the entire base was moving. Doors sealed, lights switched from white to a warning shade of orange. A voice on the speakers began repeating a message about restricted movement near the outer wall. I stood in the hallway, confused, because all I had done was lose a boot. A man in heavy gear found me first. His name was Callum, one of the station's security officers, and he looked at me the way you look at someone who just said something impossible. "You want to go get the boot back?" he said. Not asked. Said, like he was trying to convince himself he heard it right. "Well, yeah," I said. "It is my only spare pair. The next supply run is weeks away." He stared at me for a long moment, then keyed his radio and said something short and fast to another team. I only caught the words possible exposure and unarmed retrieval. I did not like the sound of that second part, mostly because it made it sound like I was the one being retrieved, not the boot. They brought me to a briefing room 20 minutes later. The station director, a calm and serious woman named Nora, sat across from me with her hands folded. Around her sat a few department heads, all watching me the same way you might watch a man juggling knives for fun. "Walk me through this," she said. "You lost a boot to a ripper, and your plan is to go ask for it back." "That is the plan. Yes. You understand what a ripper is capable of." "I have read the warning signs, yes." She exhaled slowly, like she was counting in her head. On the screen behind her, someone pulled up the profile of the creature. It listed 6 confirmed encounters with research teams over the last 2 years. Only 2 of those teams had walked away without injury. The file called the animal highly territorial and unpredictable. "Here is my problem," Nora said. "I cannot, in good conscience, let one of my people walk toward that thing without an entire safety plan behind him. But I also cannot physically stop you from asking, because it seems your mind is already made up." "It is just a boot," I said. "I am not going to fight it. I am just going to ask." A younger researcher sitting near the end of the table, a woman named Ellie, leaned forward with interest instead of fear. She studied wildlife behavior for the station, and she seemed to be the only person in the room who was more curious than terrified. "If it took the boot without attacking him," she said, "that tells us something. Predators that intend to kill do not usually stop to steal footwear." It grabbed the boot and left. That is not hunting behavior. That is closer to curiosity. Nora looked unconvinced, but she nodded slowly, like she respected the point even if she did not like where it was going. "Fine," she said, "but you are not going alone." That is how, 1 hour later, I found myself walking toward the ridge with 4 armed escorts, 1 drone hovering above us, and Ellie walking just behind me with a scanner in her hands. My heart was pounding, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I could feel the tension coming off every single person around me, like heat from a fire. The ground turned rocky as we reached the base of the ridge. Broken branches and claw marks covered the dirt. Somewhere ahead, past a cluster of tall red stones, was the den where the drone had tracked the creature. Callum raised a hand for us to stop. Through the gap in the stones, we could see it. The Ripper. It was lying near the mouth of a shallow cave, half in shadow, one eye open, and watching us the moment we appeared. Beside it, resting on a flat rock like it had been placed there on purpose, was my boot. Every gun around me lifted at once. My pulse spiked, not from fear of the animal, but from the fear that someone beside me might do something sudden and make this so much worse than it needed to be. "Nobody move unless it moves first," Callum whispered. I raised both hands slowly to show I was not a threat, then took one careful step forward. The Ripper's head lifted, its whole body tensed. I heard someone behind me hold their breath. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm and even. "That is mine. I am just here to get it back. I am not here to hurt you." The creature did not move. Its eyes tracked me, sharp and alert, but its body stayed low and still, the way an animal stays when it is deciding whether something is worth the trouble. I took another step, then another, until I was close enough to see the detail of its armored skin up close, rough and layered like old tree bark. I crouched down slowly, keeping my movements small and unhurried, and reached for the boot. The Ripper's tail flicked once. A low sound rumbled from somewhere in its chest, not quite a growl, more like a warning without real anger behind it. I paused, my hand hovering just above the boot, and looked at it directly. "I am not taking anything that is yours," I said quietly. "Just this one thing. It is mine." The sound faded, the tail went still, and then, almost like it had lost interest in the entire situation, the creature lowered its head back down onto its front legs and closed its open eye. I picked up the boot, stood slowly, and stepped backward without turning my back on it, just in case. Nobody behind me said a word until I reached the group again, boot in hand, unharmed. Ellie looked at the creature, then at me, then back at the creature, her scanner completely forgotten in her hands. "It let you take it," she said, almost in disbelief. "It just let you take it back." "It was never trying to start anything," I said, pulling the boot onto my foot. "It probably grabbed it out of curiosity, maybe liked the smell or the texture. Once it had what it wanted from the encounter, there was nothing left worth fighting over. Boots are not food. I was not a threat to its home, so there was no reason for it to attack." Callum lowered his weapon, though his hands were still shaking slightly from the tension of the last few minutes. He shook his head and let out a short laugh that sounded more like relief than humor. "You just walked up to one of the most dangerous animals on this planet and asked for your shoe back," he said, "and it worked." We walked back to the station in near silence, though I could feel the mood shifting from fear into something closer to disbelief, mixed with amusement. By the time we reached the gate, word had already spread through the base. People stood in doorways and hallways just to see me walk past, whispering to each other, some of them laughing quietly, others still shaking their heads like they could not process what they had just heard happened. Nora met me near the entrance, arms crossed, though there was the faintest hint of a smile at the edge of her mouth, like she was trying very hard not to show it. "Next time," she said, "you tell someone before you march off toward the most dangerous creature on this planet by yourself." "I will keep that in mind," I said, though we both knew I probably would not. She shook her head and walked away, muttering something about paperwork and reports she now had to write, explaining how a boot retrieval turned into a full station lockdown. I heard her say the words diplomatic wildknife negotiation under her breath, like she still could not believe those words needed to exist in an official report. That night, in the mess hall, people kept coming up to ask about it. Ellie sat across from me, still going through her notes from the encounter, clearly more excited about the animal behavior than anything else that happened. "You realize you might have just changed how we study that species," she said. "Nobody has ever gotten that close and walked away without a single scratch. This could change everything we thought we knew about them." "I just wanted my boot back," I said, and she laughed, shaking her head. Word of what happened spread far beyond our station over the following days. Other outposts asked about it. Some people thought it was reckless. Others thought it was the calmest thing they had ever heard. I did not think it was either one of those things. I just thought it was simple. The animal was not trying to hurt me. It was not trying to steal from me out of anger. It just wanted to know what the boot was, and once it knew, it had no reason to keep it. Sometimes the most dangerous situations are not solved with force or fear. Sometimes they are solved by staying calm, understanding what the other side actually wants, and simply asking for what belongs to you, without turning it into something bigger than it needs to be. I still have that boot. It has a few new scratch marks on it now. Deep grooves from teeth that could have crushed steel if it had wanted to. Every time I put it on, I remember standing in front of that creature, both of us deciding, without a single word of real conflict, that there was nothing here worth fighting over. And every single person on that station still brings it up, even now, whenever they want to remind me that I am, without question, the calmest and most reckless person they have ever met.